The soft chatter of the afternoon crowd filled Bluebird Diner, a cozy spot tucked between a hardware store and a bookshop in downtown Portland. The smell of fresh coffee and apple pie hung in the air as Lily wiped down the counter, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. At 26, she moved with the efficiency of someone who had memorized every inch of the space, balancing plates along her arm with the same precision she once applied to sheet music. "Order up," called Roy from the kitchen window, sliding 2 plates of the day's special toward her. Lily grabbed the plates with a smile and headed to table 7 where an elderly couple sat. "Here you go. Meatloaf special with extra gravy on the side, just how you like it, Mr. Chen." Mr. Chen, a regular since the diner opened 5 years ago, gave an appreciative nod. "Thank you, dear. Busy day?" "Just the usual Tuesday crowd," Lily replied, refilling their water glasses. What she didn't mention was how her fingers had been itching all morning. How they sometimes tapped out Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat, major on the edge of the counter when no one was looking. None of the customers, who came to Bluebird for the famous chicken pot pie or Roy's secret recipe chili, knew that their friendly waitress once performed at Carnegie Hall. They didn't know about the master's degree from Juilliard, gathering dust in her small apartment, or about the years she'd spent hunched over piano keys, practicing until her shoulders ached and her fingertips grew calloused. Life had a way of rerouting dreams. 3 years ago, when her father's stroke required round-the-clock care and mounting medical bills, Lily had put her musical career on indefinite hold. She'd moved back to Portland, found the waitressing job at Bluebird, and settled into a routine that felt worlds away from the concert hall she once dreamed of filling. "Hey, can I get a refill when you get a chance?" A man in a faded blue work shirt held up his empty coffee mug from the corner booth. "Coming right up," Lily called back, grabbing the coffee pot. As she made her rounds, her gaze kept drifting to the upright piano in the corner by the front window. It was a new addition. Well, new to the diner, though the piano itself looked like it had seen at least half a century of use. The owner, Darlene, had bought it at an estate sale last weekend, thinking it would add character to the place. "It's just for looks," Darlene had explained while 2 delivery men positioned it against the wall. "Nobody plays anymore, but it reminds people of the good old days." If only Darlene knew how Lily's heart had leapt at the sight of it, even with its chipped mahogany veneer and slightly uneven legs propped up by a folded napkin. The lunch rush wound down around 2 o'clock, as it always did. The construction crew from the site down the block had paid their bills and left. The retired postal workers who gathered every Tuesday had disbanded until next week. Even Mr. and Mrs. Chen had shuffled out, leaving behind a generous tip and their usual kind words. Lily glanced at the clock. It would be slow until the dinner crowd started arriving around 5. Roy had stepped out for a cigarette, and Darlene was in the back office doing paperwork. She walked to the piano, running her fingers lightly over the dusty lid. It had been so long since she'd touched a real piano. Her apartment only had space for a small electronic keyboard that couldn't capture the resonance, the feeling of notes vibrating through wood and string and air. Looking around one more time to make sure no customers needed her, Lily carefully lifted the lid. The keys were yellowed with age, but when she pressed middle C, the note rang true. Someone had kept this old beauty in tune. Her heart quickened as she slid onto the bench, adjusting her apron. Just one piece, she told herself. Something short. No one would mind. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before muscle memory took over. The opening notes of Debussy's Clair de Lune filled the diner, tentative at first, then flowing like water. Lily closed her eyes, letting herself be carried by the familiar rises and falls of the piece. She forgot about the ketchup stain on her sleeve, forgot about the ache in her feet from standing all day, forgot that she was in a diner instead of a concert hall. The music swelled beneath her hands, the old piano singing with surprising clarity. This was the language she'd been fluent in since childhood. These patterns of sound that could express what words could not. In this moment, she wasn't Lily the waitress, but Lily the pianist, the woman who had once received a standing ovation from a crowd of hundreds. So lost was she in the music that she didn't notice the diner had fallen completely silent. She didn't see Roy frozen in the doorway, cigarette halfway to his lips, or Darlene standing wide-eyed in the entrance to the back office. She didn't notice the couple who had been about to leave now sinking back into their booth, or the truck driver who had just walked in standing motionless by the door. It wasn't until the final notes faded, the last gentle chord hanging in the air, that Lily became aware of her surroundings again. Her eyes flew open and her cheeks flushed hot with embarrassment. What had she been thinking? This wasn't some fancy music hall. This was her workplace. She stood quickly, smoothing her apron. "I'm sorry, The sound of clapping cut her off. The truck driver at the door was applauding, a look of genuine surprise on his weathered face. The couple in the booth joined in, then Roy and Darlene, too. "Holy smokes, Lily," Roy said, letting the door swing shut behind him. "Where'd you learn to play like that?" Before she could answer, Darlene was crossing the floor toward her and Lily braced herself for a reprimand. Instead, her boss looked at her with newfound curiosity. "In all the years you've worked here, how come you never mentioned you could play like that?" Darlene asked, gesturing to the piano. Lily shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "It never came up." "And it's not. It's not what I do anymore." "Well, it should be," said the woman from the couple in the booth. "That was beautiful." The truck driver nodded in agreement. "My grandmother used to play that same song. Never thought I'd hear it in a place like this." A strange feeling bubbled up in Lily's chest, part pride, part sadness for what she'd set aside, part something else she couldn't quite name. She hadn't performed for anyone in years, had almost convinced herself it didn't matter anymore, yet the looks on these people's faces suggested otherwise. The bell above the door jingled as two more customers walked in, breaking the moment. Lily quickly stepped away from the piano, reaching for her order pad. "I should get back to work," she said, though part of her wanted to sit back down, to play just one more piece. As she headed toward the new customers, Darlene caught her arm. "We're going to talk about this later," her boss said, but there was an excited gleam in her eye that made it clear this wasn't a scolding. Throughout the rest of her shift, Lily felt different somehow. Customers who had witnessed her playing looked at her with new interest. The truck driver left a larger tip than usual with a note scrawled on the receipt. "Thanks for the music. Made my day." Even Roy seemed to see her differently, asking during a lull, "So were you like famous or something?" Lily laughed at that. "No, not famous, it was what I was supposed to do with my life once upon a time." As she refilled salt shakers and wiped down menus, her mind kept returning to how it felt to play again, really play on a real piano with people listening. The way the music had transformed the ordinary diner into something else entirely, if only for a few minutes. When her shift ended and she hung up her apron, Darlene motioned her into the office. Lily prepared herself for questions she wasn't sure how to answer. "Sit down," Darlene said, pointing to the chair across from her cluttered desk. "I've been thinking." Lily perched on the edge of the seat, hands folded in her lap. "Business has been slow lately," Darlene began. "Been trying to figure out how to bring in more customers." This wasn't what Lily had expected. "Okay, that piano. I bought it because it was cheap and looked nice, but now I'm thinking." Darlene leaned forward, elbows on her desk. "What would you say to playing a little during the slow hours? Could be good for business." Lily blinked, sure she had misheard. "You want me to play? Here? Why not? People liked it today. Might bring in a different crowd." Darlene shrugged. "We could try it out, see how it goes. Nothing fancy, just a little background music." For a moment, Lily couldn't speak. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Playing classical music in a diner? Would people even want that? She thought of the truck driver, of the way his face had softened at the familiar melody. "I don't know," she said slowly. "The customers here, I'm not sure classical music is really their thing." Darlene chuckled. "You might be surprised. Anyway, think about it. Doesn't have to be right away." As Lily walked home that evening, her mind raced with possibilities. The idea of playing regularly again, even in a humble diner, sent a current of excitement through her that she hadn't felt in years, but doubts followed close behind. Would the regular customers think it was pretentious? Would she be crossing some invisible line between her old life and her new one? She stopped at the corner store for milk and eggs, still lost in thought. The cashier, an older woman who often worked the same morning shifts as Lily did at the diner, rang up her items. "You seem a million miles away, honey," the woman remarked. Lily smiled apologetically, "Just thinking about an opportunity that came up today." "Well, whatever it is, I hope you take it," the cashier said, handing over her change. "Life's too short not to." Walking the final blocks to her apartment, Lily found herself humming Clair de Lune, her fingers moving slightly at her sides as if playing invisible keys. For the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of the passion that had once defined her. Maybe Darlene was right. Maybe this could work. As she unlocked her door, she made up her mind. Tomorrow she would tell Darlene yes. She would play for the customers at Bluebird Diner, and she would see what happened. After all, what did she have to lose? What she couldn't possibly know was how this simple decision would change everything. Not just for her, but for everyone who walked through those diner doors in the weeks to come. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Bluebird Diner, casting long rectangles of light across the checkered floor. Lily arrived early for her shift, her hair still damp from the shower, a folder of sheet music tucked under her arm. She'd spent half the night digging through boxes she hadn't opened since moving back to Portland, searching for pieces that might work in a diner setting. Morning, Roy called from the kitchen where he was already prepping for breakfast.
You ready for your big debut?
Lily managed a nervous smile. After telling Darlene she would try playing during the afternoon lull, they had settled on today for her first official performance. Darlene had even put a small handwritten sign in the window. Live piano music 2-4 p.m. weekdays. As ready as I'll ever be, Lily replied, hanging up her coat in the back room. Her stomach fluttered with a mixture of excitement and dread. What if everyone hated it? What if they laughed or complained or simply ignored her? It had been years since she'd performed for an audience that wasn't her bathroom mirror. The morning rush came and went as usual. The before-work crowd grabbing coffee and breakfast sandwiches, followed by the retirees who lingered over pancakes and endless coffee refills. Lily moved through her familiar routine of taking orders, delivering food and clearing tables. But her mind kept drifting to the afternoon ahead. During a brief lull, she found herself standing by the piano again, absently running her fingers along its wooden frame. You know, I've been coming here 3 times a week for 5 years. And I never knew you were a pianist, said Mr. Chen, who was nursing his post-breakfast tea at a nearby table. Lily turned, surprised. I'm not really. Not anymore. Mr. Chen raised an eyebrow. Once a musician, always a musician. That doesn't go away just because you're not on a stage. His words stayed with Lily as the lunch crowd arrived, bringing with it the usual chaos of the midday rush. By the time 2 o'clock rolled around, the diner had quieted considerably. Only a handful of tables were occupied, a young woman typing on her laptop in the corner, an off-duty police officer enjoying a late lunch, and a pair of elderly women sharing a slice of pie. Darlene caught Lily's eye and nodded toward the piano. Showtime, kid. Taking a deep breath, Lily wiped her suddenly sweaty palms on her apron. She had chosen her pieces carefully, nothing too heavy or complicated, music that could serve as pleasant background rather than demanding center stage. She slid onto the bench and arranged her sheet music, though she knew most of the pieces by heart. Folks, Darlene announced to the sparse crowd, we've got something special for you today. Our very own Lily here is going to play some music while you enjoy your afternoon. And she's not just any piano player. She studied at that fancy music school in New York. Lily felt her cheeks grow hot as the customers turned to look at her with varying degrees of interest. She hadn't wanted Darlene to mention Juilliard. It felt like bragging somehow, or setting expectations too high for what was supposed to be casual diner music. With a small nod to acknowledge the scattered applause, Lily began with a light Mozart piece, cheerful, uncomplicated, the kind of classical music that even people who claimed to dislike classical music could enjoy. Her fingers were stiff at first, and she winced at a few missed notes. But gradually, as the music flowed, she relaxed into it. This wasn't a recital hall with stern-faced judges or a competition with her future on the line. This was just the diner where she worked, and these were just people eating lunch. As she transitioned into Debussy's Arabesque, she noticed the young woman with the laptop had stopped typing and was watching her with interest. The police officer had put down his newspaper. Even the kitchen staff had gone quiet. The usual clanging of pots and pans temporarily hushed. 20 minutes into her performance, the bell above the door jingled, and a group of construction workers filed in, their boots leaving dusty prints on the floor. Lily's heart sank. These were regulars from the site down the street, usually in a hurry and interested only in getting food in their stomachs before heading back to work. They would surely hate the piano playing, might even complain about it. She considered stopping, but something made her continue, switching to a livelier Chopin piece as the men settled into the largest booth. To her surprise, none of them seemed bothered by the music. They ordered their usual burgers and coffee, speaking more quietly than they typically did. By 3 o'clock, something unexpected had happened. The diner, normally nearly empty at this hour, had filled up considerably. Word seemed to have spread somehow. New faces appeared. An art teacher from the community college who introduced herself during a brief break between pieces. A retired bus driver who requested something by that Russian fellow with the big hands. A young mother with a sleeping baby who said the music was the first thing that had kept her child asleep for more than 20 minutes. Lily played for nearly the full 2 hours, taking only short breaks to sip water and rest her hands. She had forgotten how physically demanding playing could be, how it required not just finger dexterity but strength and stamina. Still, despite the slight ache in her forearms, she felt more alive than she had in months. That was something else, Darlene said when Lily finally closed the piano lid at 4 o'clock. Look at this place. Haven't seen it this full at this hour since we opened. Lily looked around, surprised to find that most tables were indeed occupied. Even more surprising were the looks she received. Nods of appreciation, smiles, even a few thumbs up from the construction crew as they headed back to work. Same time tomorrow? Darlene asked, a hopeful note in her voice. Lily nodded, unable to suppress her smile. Same time tomorrow. Over the next few days, Lily's afternoon performances became a regular feature at Bluebird Diner. Word continued to spread, bringing in new customers curious about the waitress who played classical music between taking orders. Not everyone was enthusiastic, of course. Some regulars grumbled about the change in atmosphere, and occasionally someone would ask her to play something normal, like Billy Joel. But on the whole, the response was overwhelmingly positive. On Friday afternoon, as Lily cleared a table near the window, she overheard 2 older men talking. Never thought I'd see the day when people would line up to hear Bach and a greasy spoon, one said, shaking his head in wonder. Shows what folks know, his companion replied. Think people like us don't appreciate good music? My grandmother played church organ for 40 years. Taught me to recognize Bach from Beethoven before I could tie my shoes. Lily smiled to herself as she carried their plates to the kitchen. She had made the same mistake, assuming the diner's clientele wouldn't appreciate classical music. But as the days passed, she was discovering how wrong she had been. The construction workers, it turned out, included a former high school band director who had changed careers after budget cuts eliminated music programs. The gruff truck driver who came in on Tuesdays had grown up listening to his mother's classical records. Even Roy, who had initially seemed skeptical, had started requesting specific pieces. He had a fondness for Vivaldi that surprised everyone, himself included. A week after her first performance, Lily was preparing for her afternoon session when Darlene approached her with an excited gleam in her eye. Got a proposition for you, Darlene said, pulling up a chair. Business is up 20% since you started playing. People are coming in just to hear you. Lily blinked in surprise. Really? Really? So here's what I'm thinking. How about we make this official? 3 afternoons a week you play for 2 hours. I'll pay you extra on top of your regular wages and you can put out a tip jar. The offer took Lily by surprise. You want to pay me to play? That's generally how it works when someone provides a service that brings in customers, Darlene said with a wry smile. You're good, kid. Better than good. You should be getting something for it. A lump formed in Lily's throat. It had been so long since anyone had valued her music enough to pay her for it. After leaving Juilliard, she had tried to find work as a pianist, but without connections or a breakthrough opportunity. Those doors had remained firmly closed. I'd like that, she said finally. Thank you. Later that afternoon, as Lily played a gentle Schubert piece, she noticed a new face in the crowd, a middle-aged woman in a tailored suit who sat alone at a small table, watching her intently. The woman stayed for Lily's entire performance, ordered nothing but coffee, and left a $20 bill in the newly established tip jar. The following day, the woman returned, this time with a companion. They sat through the full 2 hours again, and afterward the woman approached the piano. Excuse me, she said, extending her hand. I'm Dr. Helen West. I teach music at Portland State University. Lily shook her hand, her heart suddenly pounding. Lily Chen, nice to meet you. Your playing is remarkable, Dr. West said, especially considering she glanced around the diner, unconventional venue. May I ask where you studied? Juilliard, Lily replied, feeling strangely guilty, as if she had somehow betrayed her education by ending up here. I graduated 3 years ago. Dr. West's eyebrows rose. And now you're here. There must be a story there. There is, Lily said simply, not ready to share the details of her father's illness, the mountain of medical bills, the dreams she had set aside. Well, I'd love to hear it sometime, Dr. West said. She handed Lily a business card. The university has a community concert series on Sunday afternoons. We're always looking for talented performers. If you're interested, give me a call. Lily stared at the card long after Dr. West had left, turning it over and over in her fingers. A real concert. A real audience. It was what she had trained for, what she had once dreamed of. But as she looked around the diner, at Mr. Chen reading his newspaper, at the construction workers laughing in their corner booth, at Roy peeking out from the kitchen to give her a thumbs up, she realized something had shifted inside her. The line between her old life and her new one was beginning to blur. These people, this place that had been just a job, a means to an end, had somehow become something more. And her music, which she had thought belonged only in concert halls and prestigious venues, had found an unexpected home here among the coffee cups and laminated menus. As Lily tucked the business card into her pocket and stood to take an order from a newly arrived customer, she felt a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time in years, she was curious about what might happen next. Whispers followed Lily as she moved between tables, balancing plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "That's her," she heard a woman say to her companion. "The piano player." It had been 3 weeks since her first performance, and word had spread far beyond what anyone at Bluebird Diner had expected. The local newspaper had run a small feature the previous Sunday, describing the unlikely combination of classical music and comfort food that was drawing crowds to the modest establishment. The article had included a photo of Lily at the piano, still wearing her blue uniform apron, her face caught in a moment of pure concentration. "Your fan club is here again," Roy teased as Lily picked up an order for table 5. He nodded toward the window where 3 elderly women sat, the same ones who had started coming every Wednesday specifically to hear her play. "They're not my fan club," Lily protested, though she smiled as she carried the plates to their table. The women, Pearl, Dottie, and Frances, had become regulars, always requesting the same corner table and staying for Lily's entire performance. "We've got our opera glasses today," Pearl said with a wink as Lily set down their orders. She pulled out a small pair of antique opera glasses from her purse. For the full concert experience, Lily laughed. "I'm not sure a diner piano recital warrants opera glasses." "Nonsense," Frances replied. "Music is music no matter where it's played. You could be at Carnegie Hall or in a subway station. If it's beautiful, it deserves proper appreciation." The women's enthusiasm warmed Lily's heart, but it also stirred a strange melancholy. Once she had imagined herself playing in those grand venues, not in a diner where her music competed with the sound of sizzling burgers and clinking silverware. Dr. West's business card still sat on Lily's dresser at home. She had looked at it every morning for a week but hadn't called. The idea of performing in a formal setting again was both thrilling and terrifying. What if she wasn't good enough anymore? What if years of waiting tables had dulled her edge? The afternoon crowd began to thin as the clock ticked toward 2. Lily glanced at the piano in the corner, its lid already open in anticipation of her performance. Darlene had started advertising the Bluebird's Classical Hour on the diner's social media accounts, and a steady stream of new customers had been coming in specifically to hear Lily play. "Ready for your encore?" Darlene asked, appearing at Lily's side with a fresh pot of coffee. Lily nodded, untying her apron. Over the past weeks, they had worked out a system. During her playing time, another server covered her tables, allowing Lily to focus entirely on the music. The arrangement had been Darlene's idea, a way to make the performance feel more official. "Oh, before I forget," Darlene added, "some guy called this morning asking if he could film you playing today. Said he runs a YouTube channel about local talents or something. I told him it was up to you." Lily felt a flutter of panic. "Film me for the internet?" "You don't have to say yes," Darlene assured her. "Just thought I'd pass it along." As Lily made her way to the piano, she noticed a young man setting up a small camera on a tripod near the far wall. He gave her a friendly wave and she returned it uncertainly. The idea of being recorded made her nervous, but there was also something appealing about it. proof that her music mattered to someone beyond these walls. She settled onto the bench and placed her hands on the keys. The diner had grown unusually quiet, the usual chatter giving way to an expectant hush. Taking a deep breath, Lily began to play. She had chosen Bach for today, a series of preludes that showcased technical skill without feeling showy. The music filled the diner, bouncing off the tiled floor and wooden tables, transforming the humble space. As always, Lily found herself getting lost in the familiar patterns, her fingers finding their way through the complex arrangements as if guided by some invisible force. Midway through her second piece, the bell above the door jingled. Lily glanced up to see a group of construction workers filing in, the same crew that had become regular attendees of her performances. They moved quietly to their usual booth, nodding in appreciation as they sat down. What happened next caught Lily completely by surprise. As she finished the prelude, the construction foreman, a burly man named Pete who rarely spoke beyond placing his order, stood up and cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying across the now crowded diner. "Before you start the next one, I was wondering if you take requests." Lily blinked in surprise. Sure, I guess. What would you like to hear?" "Beethoven's Für Elise," Pete said to the astonishment of his coworkers. "It was my mother's favorite. She used to play it every Sunday after church." A murmur of interest rippled through the diner. Lily smiled and nodded. "I'd be happy to play that for you." As she began the familiar melody, she noticed Pete close his eyes, a small smile playing on his lips. The other construction workers watched him with expressions ranging from surprise to gentle amusement. When the piece ended, Pete opened his eyes and nodded his thanks, quickly wiping at something suspiciously like a tear before sitting back down. "Anyone else have a request?" Lily asked, suddenly inspired. To her amazement, hands shot up around the diner. The retired bus driver asked for Chopin. A young woman with purple hair requested Mozart's Rondo alla Turca. Mr. Chen, who had been coming to the diner for years, shyly asked if she knew any Rachmaninoff. For the next hour, Lily played request after request, sometimes having to improvise when she didn't know a piece perfectly. The atmosphere in the diner had transformed completely. Strangers were talking to each other, sharing stories about their connections to the music, offering suggestions for what Lily should play next. "My grandmother used to play that one," said a tattooed man in his 20s after Lily performed a Schubert impromptu. "She taught piano lessons out of her living room for 40 years. I had tickets to see that performed at the symphony last year," an elderly woman commented after a Debussy piece. "But I got sick and couldn't go. Never thought I'd get to hear it live after all." By the time 4 o'clock rolled around, Lily's fingers were tired, but her heart was full. As she played her final piece, a gentle Chopin nocturne, she realized something had shifted in the diner. The people who had come for the novelty of hearing classical music in a diner were now engaged, connected, sharing something meaningful together. When she finished, the applause was enthusiastic. The young man with the camera gave her a thumbs up from across the room. Even Roy had emerged from the kitchen to clap, a dish towel still slung over his shoulder. As the crowd began to disperse and Lily prepared to return to her serving duties, Pete, the construction foreman, approached the piano. "Thank you for playing my mother's song," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "She passed 5 years ago. Hearing it today, it was like having a piece of her back." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. "I'm glad I could do that for you." Pete nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small business card. "My brother-in-law runs the community center over on Maple Street. They've got an old piano nobody plays. He's been looking for someone to teach some basic lessons to the kids after school. Thought you might be interested." Lily took the card, touched by the unexpected offer. "I'll think about it. Thank you." As Pete returned to his table, Lily tucked the card into her pocket alongside Dr. West's. 2 possibilities, 2 different paths forward. Neither was the glittering career she had once imagined for herself, but both offered something she hadn't expected to find again, the chance to share her music in a meaningful way. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of orders and table clearing. As closing time approached, Darlene called Lily into the office. "Got something to show you," Darlene said, turning her computer monitor so Lily could see. On the screen was a social media page for the diner, and at the top was a post with a video, Lily playing Bach that very afternoon. In just a few hours, it had already been shared dozens of times. People are loving it, Darlene said, scrolling through the comments. Beautiful music. Never expected to find this in a diner. Going to bring my mother next week. She loves classical music. Lily stared at the screen, a mixture of emotions washing over her. There was pride, certainly, at seeing people respond to her playing. But there was also a strange vulnerability in knowing her music. Something so personal, so deeply part of her, was now out there for anyone to see. The guy with the camera asked if he could come back next week, Darlene continued. Said he wants to do a proper interview with you for his channel. Thinks your story could really connect with people. My story? Lily echoed. You know, Juilliard graduate playing in a diner. It's unusual, makes people curious. Darlene gave her a searching look. You don't have to do it if you're not comfortable. Lily thought about it. For years she had kept her past and present lives separate, as if her training and her current job couldn't coexist. But these past weeks had shown her how wrong she'd been. The diner customers had embraced her music with an openness and enthusiasm that had surprised her. They didn't care that she wasn't performing in a prestigious concert hall. They simply appreciated the beauty she could create. I'll think about it, she said finally. That night, as Lily walked home under a star-filled sky, she felt lighter somehow. The weight of abandoned dreams and unmet expectations seemed less heavy. Her path had taken an unexpected turn, but perhaps it wasn't the wrong turn she had thought it was. At her apartment, she pulled out both business cards, Dr. West's offering a return to the formal world of classical performance, and Pete's brother-in-law's offering a chance to teach children in her community. Two different opportunities, both valuable in their own way. For the first time in years, Lily allowed herself to imagine a future that combined her love of music with the connections she was building in this unexpected place. It wouldn't look like the future she had once planned, but maybe, just maybe, it could be something even better. As she drifted off to sleep, the notes of Beethoven's Für Elise played in her mind, along with the image of Pete's face as he listened, remembering his mother. Music had always been Lily's passion, but now she was discovering its true power, not just to impress or entertain, but to connect, to heal, to bring joy in the most unexpected places. And tomorrow, there would be new requests, new faces, new stories to discover. Lily couldn't wait. And we're live in 3, 2, 1. The young man behind the camera gave Lily a thumbs up, and she felt her heart jump into her throat. After thinking it over for a few days, Lily had agreed to be interviewed for Tyler's YouTube channel, Hidden Talents. Now she sat at the piano in Bluebird Diner, hands folded in her lap, trying not to look as nervous as she felt. The diner was closed for the morning to allow for the filming, but Darlene, Roy, and a few regulars had stayed to watch. Today I'm with Lily Chen, a Juilliard-trained pianist who's been drawing crowds to this local diner with her classical performances, Tyler said to the camera. Lily, thanks for letting me feature you on the channel. Thanks for being interested, Lily replied, her voice steadier than she expected. So tell us, how does someone go from Juilliard to playing in a diner? That's quite a journey. Lily took a deep breath. She had been dreading this question, but also knew it was inevitable. For the first time, she decided to share the full story. My father got sick during my final year at Juilliard, she began. He had a stroke and then a second one. The medical bills piled up and he needed full-time care. I moved back to Portland to help my mom, took this job to pay the bills, and life just happened, I guess. Music had to take a back seat for a while. That must have been difficult, Tyler said, his tone genuinely sympathetic. Lily nodded. It was. For a long time I felt like I'd failed somehow. Like all those years of training had been wasted. She glanced around the diner at the familiar faces watching her. But playing here has shown me that music can touch people anywhere. It doesn't have to be on a big stage to matter. The interview continued with Tyler asking about her training, her favorite composers, and her unexpected success at the diner. When he suggested she play something, Lily chose Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece that had become a favorite among the regular customers. As her fingers moved across the keys, she forgot about the camera, forgot about the interview, and simply lost herself in the music as she always did. When the final notes faded, she looked up to see everyone watching her with that familiar expression of wonder that still took her by surprise. That was beautiful, Tyler said. One last question before we wrap up. What's next for you? Will you keep playing here at the diner? It was a question Lily had been asking herself. In the past week, she had called both Dr. West and Pete's brother-in-law. The community center needed someone to teach piano basics to children 2 afternoons a week, and the university concert series had an opening in their schedule next month. Both opportunities excited her in different ways. I'll definitely keep playing here, she said with certainty. But I'm also exploring some new possibilities. Teaching, maybe some small concerts. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm open to wherever this journey takes me next. After the interview wrapped up, Darlene handed Lily a cup of coffee. You did good, kid. Real natural on camera. I was terrified, Lily admitted with a laugh. Couldn't tell. You looked like you belonged there. Darlene hesitated, then added, Your dad would be proud, you know. Lily blinked back unexpected tears. Her father had been the one who had first noticed her interest in music, who had saved up for her first piano lessons, who had driven her to countless auditions and recitals. I hope so. When's he coming to see you play? Roy asked, joining the conversation. He can't, Lily said quietly. The second stroke affected his mobility. He's in a care facility across town. He can't really go out much. Roy and Darlene exchanged glances. Well, Darlene said after a moment, if he can't come to the music, maybe the music can go to him. That evening, as Lily played her regular afternoon set at the diner, her mind kept returning to Darlene's suggestion. Her father had always been her biggest supporter. He had sat through countless practice sessions, had traveled with her to New York for her Juilliard audition, had framed her acceptance letter and hung it in the living room. And yet he had never heard her play at the diner. Between pieces, as applause filled the room, Lily made a spontaneous announcement. I've been thinking about taking this show on the road, she said with a smile. Well, not too far down the road. Just to Riverside Care Center where my dad lives. I was wondering if any of you might want to come along. Kind of like a field trip version of our afternoon concerts. To her surprise, hands shot up around the diner. Pearl, Dottie, and Francis were the first volunteers, followed by Mr. Chen and several of the construction workers. Even Roy poked his head out of the kitchen and gave a thumbs up. I could film it, offered Tyler, who had returned to enjoy the afternoon performance. Make a nice video for the residents who can't leave their rooms. Overwhelmed by the response, Lily felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, she managed to say. That would mean a lot. 3 days later, Lily found herself setting up in the community room at Riverside Care Center, a small portable keyboard standing in for the diner's piano. The room was filled not only with residents in wheelchairs and walkers, but also with familiar faces from the diner. Pearl, Dottie, and Francis in their Sunday best. Pete and 2 other construction workers still in their work clothes. Mr. Chen with a bouquet of flowers. And even Darlene, who had closed the diner early to attend. Tyler moved around the edges of the room with his camera, capturing the unusual gathering. In the front row sat Lily's father, his right side still weak from the stroke but his eyes bright with anticipation. Her mother stood behind his wheelchair, her hand resting on his shoulder. Dad, Lily said, kneeling beside him before the performance began, I wish you could have come to the diner to hear me play, but I'm so happy we could bring everyone here instead. Her father reached for her hand with his good one, squeezing it gently. His speech had been affected by the stroke, making his words slow and sometimes difficult to understand, but his message was clear. Always knew. You'd find your way back to music. The performance that followed was unlike any Lily had given before. She played all her father's favorites, Bach, Chopin, a little Gershwin for variety, and between pieces, her diner regulars shared stories with the residents about how they had discovered Lily's playing and what it had meant to them. I hadn't listened to classical music since my wife passed, Mr. Chen told the room. Too many memories. But hearing Lily play at the diner, it was like rediscovering an old friend. My crew used to rush through lunch, Pete added. Now we take our full break just to hear a couple of pieces. The job site's a lot less stressful since we started doing that. As the afternoon progressed, something magical happened. The artificial divide between the diner crowd and the care center residents dissolved. They became simply people sharing an experience, connected by the music and by their appreciation for it. Residents requested songs that reminded them of their youth, and diner regulars shared stories about how certain pieces had become part of their weekly routine. Toward the end of the performance, Lily played a piece she had been working on in private, Debussy's Clair de Lune, her father's absolute favorite. As the familiar melody filled the room, she watched his face, saw the tears in his eyes, and knew that all the turns her life had taken, even the difficult ones, had led her exactly where she needed to be. After the final notes faded and the applause died down, the care center's activities director approached Lily with an unexpected offer. "We have a piano in storage that was donated years ago," the woman explained. "It needs some tuning, but it's a decent instrument. If you'd be interested in playing here regularly, maybe once a month, we could set it up permanently in the community room." Before Lily could respond, Darlene jumped in. "We could make it work with her schedule at the diner. Maybe do a special Bluebird Diner Day here once a month. Bring some pies, make it an event." The suggestion sparked immediate enthusiasm from both the residents and the diner crowd. Plans began to form. Transportation arrangements for residents who wanted to visit the diner, a rotating schedule for diner regulars to accompany Lily to the care center, even talk of a holiday special combining both communities. As the crowd dispersed and Lily helped her father back to his room, he held on to her hand. "Proud of you," he said, the words coming slowly but clearly. "Found your own path." That night, as Lily walked home under a sky turning pink with sunset, she reflected on the strange and wonderful turn her life had taken. 6 weeks ago, she had been just a waitress with a buried dream, going through the motions of a life she hadn't planned. Now she was at the center of something unexpected and beautiful, a community forming around music, in the most unlikely of places. Her phone buzzed, with a text from Dr. West confirming her upcoming performance at the university concert series. Another message followed from the community center, finalizing details for her first children's piano class next week. And a third came from Tyler, with a link to the interview he had just posted online, already gathering enthusiastic comments. Lily smiled to herself as she climbed the stairs to her apartment. Her life didn't look anything like what she had imagined during those long practice sessions at Juilliard. It was messier, more complicated, stretched in directions she never could have predicted. But as she unlocked her door and glanced at the framed photo of her father on the wall, taken years ago, before his illness, his arm around her shoulders after a recital, she realized something important. Success didn't have to mean concert halls and standing ovations. Sometimes it meant connecting people across differences. Sometimes it meant bringing music to places that needed it. Sometimes it meant creating beauty in everyday spaces. She opened her window to let in the evening breeze and sat at her small keyboard. For the first time in years, she felt no pressure as her fingers touched the keys, only joy. She began to play, not practicing for a performance or trying to impress anyone, but simply for the pure pleasure of making music. And somehow, she knew this was just the beginning. 6 months had passed since Lily first touched the keys of the old piano at Bluebird Diner. The crisp autumn air had given way to winter snow, then spring rain, and now summer sunshine streamed through the diner's windows, casting long rectangles of light across the checkered floor. Lily arrived early, as she always did on performance days, a new folder of sheet music tucked under her arm. The diner looked different today. Tables had been rearranged to create a small stage area around the piano, and someone had strung twinkling lights along the back wall. A hand-lettered sign on the door read, "Bluebird Classics, 6-month anniversary concert, 7 p.m. There she is, our star pianist." Darlene called from behind the counter. "Everything's ready for tonight. We're already booked solid. Had to start a waiting list." Lily smiled, still not entirely used to the idea that people would wait in line to hear her play in a diner. "It's going to be special," she agreed, hanging up her jacket. "I can't believe it's been 6 months already." Those months had transformed not just the diner but Lily's entire life. The YouTube interview had gone viral, garnering over 1 million views and spawning a series Tyler called Unexpected Virtuosos that featured talented musicians in unconventional settings. Lily's twice-monthly performances at Riverside Care Center had become so popular that they'd moved them to the larger event room, with residents from other facilities bussed in to attend. And her children's piano classes at the community center had expanded from 1 small group to 3, with a waiting list for the fall. "Did you see this?" Roy asked, sliding a newspaper across the counter as Lily poured herself a cup of coffee. The local arts section featured a full-page spread about the evening's concert, with the headline, "From Juilliard to Java, How One Waitress Transformed a Diner into Portland's Most Unexpected Concert Venue." "They make it sound so dramatic," Lily said with a laugh, though secretly she was pleased. The article mentioned not just her performances but the community that had formed around them. The construction workers who never missed a Wednesday show, the retired musicians who sometimes joined her for impromptu duets, the families who brought their children to experience classical music in a setting where they could wiggle and whisper without being shushed. As the morning rush began, Lily fell into her familiar routine of taking orders and delivering food. Despite all the changes in her life, she had kept her job at the diner, though now she worked part-time, balancing waitressing with her teaching and performances. There was something grounding about the ordinary work, something that kept her connected to the real world in a way that had sometimes felt missing during her years of intensive training. "Lily," called a familiar voice. Mr. Chen waved from his usual table, where he sat with an elegantly dressed woman Lily didn't recognize. "Come meet my daughter. She's visiting from New York." Lily approached with coffee pot in hand. "Nice to meet you. Are you enjoying Portland?" "Very much," the woman replied with a smile. "My father has told me all about your performances. I work with the New York Philharmonic's Community Outreach Program, and I'm fascinated by what you've created here." Lily nearly dropped the coffee pot. "You work with the Philharmonic?" 20 years now, the woman confirmed. "We're always looking for innovative ways to bring classical music to new audiences. What you've done here, bringing Chopin and Bach to a diner, creating this unexpected community around the music, it's exactly the kind of approach we're interested in." Mr. Chen beamed proudly, as if he had personally discovered Lily. "I told you she was special." Throughout the day, more familiar faces appeared, regulars coming in for an early lunch or late breakfast, all buzzing with excitement about the evening's concert. Pearl, Dottie, and Francis arrived shortly after noon, dressed in coordinating outfits and bearing a small gift-wrapped package. "For tonight," Pearl explained, handing it to Lily. "A little something to mark the occasion." Inside was a delicate silver pin in the shape of a piano. "It's beautiful," Lily said, genuinely touched. "Thank you. We had it engraved," Francis pointed out. "Look on the back." Lily turned the pin over to find tiny words etched into the silver. "Music finds a way." By late afternoon, the diner had closed to regular business to prepare for the evening concert. Darlene's teenage nephew helped set up extra chairs borrowed from the community center. Roy emerged from the kitchen with trays of miniature pastries. "Fancy concert food," he explained with a wink. At 6:30, Lily slipped into the back room to change from her waitress uniform into the simple black dress she had chosen for the occasion. As she pinned her hair up, she caught a glimpse of herself in the small mirror and paused. The face looking back at her was different from the one she remembered from her Juilliard days. Older, certainly, with a few fine lines beginning to form around her eyes, but also more at peace. There was a confidence there that had nothing to do with technical perfection and everything to do with purpose. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Lily?" It was Darlene. "There's someone here to see you before the show." Lily opened the door to find her parents waiting. Her father was in his wheelchair, but he looked stronger than he had in months, his face full of color. Her mother stood beside him, holding a large bouquet of wildflowers. "We wanted to wish you luck," her mother said, handing her the flowers. "Though I know you don't need it." Her father reached for her hand. His speech had improved with therapy, though he still spoke slowly and deliberately. "Remember when you were 7? First recital." Lily smiled at the memory. "I was so scared I hid under the piano and refused to come out." "I told you then," her father continued. "Music is not about being perfect. It's about sharing something beautiful." He squeezed her hand. "You understand that now?" At precisely 7 o'clock, Lily took her place at the piano as the diner erupted in applause. Every seat was filled, with people standing along the walls and peering in through the windows. She recognized faces from every corner of her life: diner regulars, care center residents who had been transported by volunteer drivers, parents of her piano students, even Dr. West and several music faculty members from the university. "Thank you all for coming." Lily said, surprised to find her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. 6 months ago, I played a piece of music in this diner without any plan or expectation. I certainly never imagined we'd be here tonight. She looked around at the packed room, at the unlikely community that had formed around her music. What's happened here isn't really about me, or even about classical music. It's about what happens when we share the things we love in unexpected places. It's about the connections that form when we stop putting art in boxes labeled highbrow or accessible. At the back of the room, she spotted Tyler with his camera, documenting the moment. Beside him stood a well-dressed woman she vaguely recognized from music circles in New York. Someone important, though Lily couldn't remember exactly who. In another time, the presence of such a person might have made her nervous, might have sent her spiraling into worry about technique and perfection. Now it barely registered. Tonight's program is special, Lily continued. Each piece was requested by someone in this room, and each has a story behind it. Before I play, I'd like the person who requested each piece to share why they chose it. First up was Pete, the construction foreman, who had requested Beethoven's Für Elise in memory of his mother. As he spoke briefly about what the piece meant to him, Lily saw heads nodding around the room, connections forming as people recognized parts of their own stories in his. One by one, others shared their selections. Mr. Chen had chosen Bach's Prelude in C major because it was the first piece he'd heard Lily play. One of her young piano students had requested Mozart's Twinkle Twinkle Variations because it was what they were learning in class. Roy had selected Vivaldi's Spring because, as he put it, it sounds like how cooking feels when everything's going right. Between each story and performance, the atmosphere in the diner grew warmer, more intimate. People who had arrived as strangers were exchanging smiles, sharing memories triggered by the music. Lily played each piece with technical skill, certainly, but also with a freedom and joy that had sometimes eluded her in more formal settings. For the final piece of the evening, Lily invited her father to speak. Darlene's nephew carefully positioned the microphone near his wheelchair. "My daughter," he began, his voice growing stronger as he spoke, "played her first notes on our old upright piano when she was 4 years old, too small to reach the pedals but already trying to make music." He paused, looking directly at Lily. "The piece she's going to play now, Debussy's Clair de Lune, was what she played the day she was accepted to Juilliard. The happiest day of her life, we thought then," he smiled, gesturing around the packed diner. "But look what she found instead. Not just an audience, but a community. Not just applause, but connection." His eyes shone with unshed tears. "As a father, you want success for your child. Took me time to see that this is success." As Lily began to play the familiar notes of Clair de Lune, she felt a sense of completion, of a circle closing. The music rose and fell, delicate and powerful at once, filling every corner of the humble diner. She played not with the technical precision she had once prized above all else, but with heart, with the understanding that music was a conversation, not a monologue. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of perfect silence before the room erupted in applause. As Lily stood to acknowledge it, she caught sight of her reflection in the diner's window. Not a failed concert pianist, not just a waitress, but something entirely her own, a musician who had found her true audience in the most unexpected place. After the final bows and the many hugs and congratulations, after the diner had emptied and only the staff remained, Darlene handed Lily a small envelope. "What's this?" Lily asked, opening it to find a check inside. "Your share of tonight's ticket sales," Darlene explained. "Plus, I've been thinking, that piano teacher who came in last week, the one who wants to rent the diner on Monday mornings for her advanced students, and the jazz trio who asked about Sunday brunches, I'm thinking we could make this a regular thing. Bluebird Music Hall has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?" Lily looked around the diner, at the piano that had changed her life, at the tables where so many connections had been made, at the ordinary space that had been transformed by music and community. "It has a perfect ring to it," she agreed. Later that night, as Lily walked home under a sky full of stars, her phone buzzed with a message from Tyler. He had posted a clip from the concert online, and it was already gathering thousands of views. Another message followed from Mr. Chen's daughter, asking if Lily would consider consulting on the Philharmonic's community program. Opportunities were opening up. Not the ones she had once dreamed of, but perhaps better, more authentic ones. Paths that allowed her to be both the classically trained musician and the person who had learned so much from her years at the diner. As she reached her apartment building, she paused to look up at the night sky. 6 months ago, she had thought her dream was dead, her training wasted, her path a detour into nowhere. How wrong she had been. Music had found a way, just as the inscription on her pin promised. It had found its way into a small diner in Portland, into the lives of people who might never have set foot in a concert hall, into communities that had formed around shared experiences of beauty. And Lily had found her way too, not back to where she thought she should be, but forward to somewhere new and unexpected, somewhere that felt at last exactly right.